So, yeah, what if I told you that Sonic has already returned to form about 6 years ago, and none of you noticed at all? Now, obviously, that is a substantially relative claim. What is any series truly about, you know? What makes a Zelda game a Zelda game, or a Mario game a Mario game? Valid question. Gamers have been foaming at the mouth, slinging their own turds at each other for years, attempting to answer this question about every series in existence. And to a certain extent, you can barely even answer it on a fundamental level. Is Sonic a series about exploration and momentum-based gameplay? Well, yes, it was for about 9 years. Then, Sonic became a series about momentum-based exploration plus treasure hunting, shooting, fishing, Resident Evil 2 remake style Mr. X horror chase sequences.
Variety platforming.
Or at least it was until 10 years later when it ceased to be momentum-based or exploration-based and became a reaction-based Gran Turismo platformer merged with a furry Morbius hack-and-slash methodical platformer until 2 years later when it became a slightly slower Gran Turismo platformer and then got fast again and regained its momentum before becoming a gravitational platformer and then becoming a Skylander-style generic adventure puzzle game and soon after returning to Gran Turismo with a bit less drifting and a bit of momentum and grappling hooks, but at the same time, it went all the way back to 91 and was exploration momentum again and has finally become a really, really fast diet version of Breath of the Wild. All we need to do with this information is uncover what exactly makes Sonic tick. It's speed, you dung bucket. Obviously, Sonic is about going fast. That is as much as I am willing to claim. People tend to put an entire series in one box and then get really upset when the developers want to exit the box to attempt cool new ideas. No, stop, stay contained. It pokes a hole you can breathe. I'm not into that. I appreciate the value that comes with allowing a series to deviate from its roots and adapt the same general concept into an entirely new format. Without that, we never would have gotten Breath of the Wild, God of War, Elden Ring. All of these titles reinvented many core elements of their own respective series, yet they're some of the greatest games ever made. Yeah, of course, you're allowed to dislike them, but you cannot fairly judge a game to be inherently garbage simply because it doesn't appeal to what you want from a series. If you want to semi-objectively review a title, you must consider its merits in isolation, and secondarily, consider how it improves upon its predecessor. If Bloodborne got a sequel, and Bloodborne 2 was just Bloodborne again, but the colors were negative and the audio was pitched up, it would still fundamentally be an incredible game on its own merits, but yeah, it would suck in relation to its predecessor. Like a begrudging 8 out of 10, not a 4 out of 10 just because you're mad. Tons of titles fall into this trap of being unfairly cast out by their fan base simply because they didn't innovate, or even because they're a downgrade from the original. But even a downgrade of the greatest game ever made is still an incredible video game. It's just, you know, pretty disappointing in a social and temporal context. This, I believe, is exactly what happened to Sonic Forces. The Sonic community is to Sonic Forces gameplay as the public school system is to its students, punishing competency and calling it failure. Yeah, if you're not exceptional, why even bother? You're basically worthless. Good luck in college. Sonic Forces is a completely competent and adequate game mechanically. If Sonic Forces wasn't a Sonic game, it'd actually be a tight little experience in most people's eyes. Sonic Forces level design is mechanically minimalistic, not requiring too much input from the player, keeping the difficulty relatively easy even on hard mode, but still leaving room for a little bit of challenge near the last fourth of the game or so. If you played Forces on normal mode, you cursed yourself. It is literally the "I've never played a Sonic game before" option. Yeah, of course it's gonna be dead easy. There's nothing particularly exceptional about the game design itself, but neither is there anything particularly offensive either. Most enemies are just there as set pieces and pose zero realistic threat to the player, which, while a little odd, wasn't really the biggest deal for me personally. I mean, it just gave me more of an opportunity to chain homing attacks together, which never gets old. The platforming is bog standard, yet enjoyable, and the straight line boost segments are visually stimulating and fun to blaze through. There are so many incredible moments that actually really impressed me during my recent playthrough. While basically just cutscenes, the Forces team didn't have to put this much quality into those segments. I enjoy the fun cinematic shots that keep the pace steady. Every single Sonic stage is an absolute pleasure to experience visually, and remains consistently enjoyable in regards to platforming, homing attacks, and set pieces. Nothing more, nothing less.
How pathetic. Your naive appraisal leaves so much to be desired. This is... I'm you. This isn't normal.
Oh, You're not me.
I am the result of your necessity to critique all that you enjoy. Manifesting in...
Why?
What?
Why are you here? Why can't I just enjoy things without critiquing them?
I'll kill you.
This game sucks.
Modern Sonic stages are an incredible downgrade when compared to all previous Boost titles. While not inherently annoying or poorly designed, there is no reason to play Forces instead of Generations, Colors, or the Unleashed Day stages. Where there was once exhilarating, split-second gameplay that required precision and reaction time to master, now there is significantly automated and generic level design that only manages to meet the bar when compared to the previous titles.
Well, yeah, I agree. Generations and Unleashed had far more varied and exciting gameplay, and were far more investing and intriguing in terms of design. But that doesn't make Force's design fundamentally flawed. I mean, so what if it's automated every once in a while? I still have a great time boosting through levels, feeling the vibration of the controller and appreciating the environments around me. And when I do reach a stretch of platforming or a 2D segment, I have a swell enough time. There's nothing offensive about Force's design. Nothing so flawed that it's frustrating or obtuse. Take Egg Gate, for example. Probably the most visually impressive stage in the game. It's got satisfying and completely inoffensive 2D sections, multiple branching paths at the very beginning of the stage, an out-of-this-world background track, and a cinematically awesome QuickTime event to finish it off. Notice how the camera starts shaking in an attempt to disorient you as you try to land the button prompt. It's genuinely a really cool stage. Modern Sonic is not devoid of gameplay value.
Sure, but that's just a sample of Sonic stages. What about Lost Valley? That stage is horribly automated and offensively short. How about Sunset Heights? It's basically just hold forward and press B with one mediocre 2D section.
True. Sonic Forces does have a serious problem with level length. Even those who genuinely enjoyed most of Sonic Forces complained that each stage felt like it was just getting good before it ended. That's a very valid criticism. And sure, maybe Lost Valley and Sunset Heights are mechanically lacking, but again, does that really make them bad? They didn't really fail at anything they attempted to be. They're just short and simple, and that's okay. People are allowed to have fun with non-complex gameplay, especially considering this is literally a children's game. I shouldn't expect Sega to say, "Oh, Swack loves mechanical depth and narrative cohesion, better do our best." No, they're just trying to make an enjoyable romp for kids and adults alike. Modern Sonic truly isn't anything deep. He's not nearly as good as he used to be. He's like an elder wanting to relive the glory days, but instead of exercising and eating healthy, he procures amphetamine and eats it like cereal, sending his body into overdrive and running a marathon, yet never quite recapturing that youthful bliss.
What on earth is redeeming about that?
I mean, it'd be fun to watch, wouldn't it?
What is wrong with you?
Classic Sonic is really nothing special. He takes more tactile effort to control and really does feel like an okay-ish version of Mania's gameplay. He's usually the least exciting to play as. But again, there truly is nothing extremely offensive about his gameplay to me. He's just average. Nothing more, nothing less.
Whoa, okay, hold on. Average? What about his butchered momentum? Everything that made Classic Sonic uniquely enjoyable in the original games is gone. There's no investing exploration with cool secrets to find, and especially no momentum required to finish stages.
Yeah, pretty much. It is disappointing that they neutered Classic's momentum to such an extent. The original titles were this consistent, lovely pinball machine of an adventure game. If you weren't running fast enough, you wouldn't make it over that gap. Forces takes that philosophy and fakes it. Classic still has a long wind-up when running, but the lack of meaningful momentum negates any purpose that the wind-up used to have, making him feel clunky at times.
Wait, really? You don't like Classic Sonic either?
Well, I wouldn't say I don't like him, but yeah, he is underwhelming. But he doesn't make me angry. He isn't frustrating to play as, he's just fine.
Well, aren't you at least a little upset that he was needlessly shoehorned into the story?
No, literally not at all, but I'll get to that later. the avatar had the most potential to mechanically innovate and capitalized on very, very little of it. Creating your own Sonic character is conceptually genius, especially since with a series with such consistently good character design, the fandom has always adored the idea of inventing their own original protagonists. Not only this, but the avatar had the potential to be a truly unique and experimental playstyle. Let's start with the good news. The avatar's grappling hook is an intelligent way to incorporate homing attacks into a non-Sonic playstyle, and the Wispins have interesting combat and traversal potential. That is all. The avatar controls like a severely limited modern Sonic, retaining the homing attack, yet lacking any of the speed that makes Sonic's tight platforming bearable. Enemies are literally just thrown in front of you, and instead of using Spectacle as an excuse for mediocre level design, Sega just said, light them on fire, electrocute them, grapple them. It is inconsistently paced as well. Every instant feels like I'm being brought to a halt right when the avatar finally started picking up speed. At least classic Sonic is so slow that you barely even notice when a stage slows down. With that being said, they're still fun to play as. Despite being the most flawed of all the playstyles in my eyes, the avatar does represent baby steps toward innovation. Slinging with the grappling hook is fun, you can pull off some pretty sick stunts using the Wispin at times, and there are some especially excellent cinematic events during the avatar's playtime.
What the heck? You didn't even give me a chance to critique.
Yeah, I know. I just said it first because I knew I'd agree with you. In the original draft of this script, I somehow totally forgot to include this segment, which is odd because this is genuinely one of the best parts of the game. Having Sonic and the Avatar team up provided for some absolutely excellent stages. This way, the irritating pace of the Avatar is broken up by Sonic's speed, and the lack of combat and traversal variety that modern Sonic displayed is fixed by the ability to swap out at any time and use the Wispin and grappling hook. Double boost makes no sense, admittedly, since the Avatar doesn't have a boost in the first place, but it's cute. I like it. I think this mini-game mode is the best part of Sonic Force's gameplay. It's the first real example of Sega more or less fully committing to a new playstyle. Yes, null space is confoundingly bad. Okay, it is not perfect, but it is what I was most pleasantly surprised with when returning to the gameplay after a while. Stages like Arsenal Period are... Pyramid. Stages such as Arsenal Period... Stages like Arsenal Pyramid are highlights. They are really, really good. Can you tell that was unscripted? I forgot to record the critic segment.
You poop your pants every day.
Sonic Force's gameplay is in no way fundamentally flawed or even bad. It simply isn't as impressive as previous entries, which, while disappointing, is no logical grounds for the level of vitriol and hate levied towards the game. Less good does not necessarily equal bad.
What do you look for in a Sonic story? Unique and introspective concepts, profound writing, tasteful humor, or narrative excellence? If your answer is all of the above, I am so sorry. Sonic Forces has a lackluster and humorously incoherent story. Now, this is a flaw. No matter what way you slice it, this game attempted to achieve something and falls short of that goal. Whereas previous titles such as Adventure 2, 06, and Unleashed at least attempt to tell a coherent and comprehensible story, Forces feels like it was written by people who cared far more about Sonic as a brand than a character.
Yeah, true.
Oh, wow. Okay, so is your point that there's some genius underlying thesis about...
No, it's just bad.
You cannot keep doing this.
If you're watching this video right now and you're not one of my 7 viewers who know nothing about what I talk about but still follow because they're extremely cool people, then you do not need me to explain to you why Sonic Forces has a broken narrative. If you're looking for an in-depth explanation, I suggest watching a story critique before continuing this segment. Or don't, I guess. Tails is useless, the timeline is inconsistent, total lack of villain payoff, reused brand names way too short, Sonic is dead.
Sonic is alive!
Look, this is a subjective segment, I admit, but I just do not care. If I wanted to play a game with deep and consistent world building, I'd go play Dark Souls. If I wanted introspective and masterfully written dialogue, I'd go play Last of Us. If I cared whether or not Sonic was tonally consistent at all, I would care about that thing, but I do not, and that's the idea, the point, I do not. I play Sonic because it's freaking awesome. I get to play as a little blue freak running around intoxicated on natural stimulants, demolishing evil robots with my spheroid homing missile attack and furthering the power of friendship and surface level morally good ideologies because it feels good, it makes me happy. Genuine criticism of a game and shunning of that criticism momentarily to continue enjoying what you enjoy is completely reasonable, as long as that suspension of disbelief doesn't result in a clouded and copium-flavored form of critique. So, you agree that it's bad, but that doesn't bother you? Yes. How is that a reasonable rebuttal of critique? It isn't. That's the point. Games still have value regardless of how flawed they are. Your gaming experience is subject to your personal real-life experiences, tendencies, and preferences. Some like me can enjoy the good housed in Sonic Forces without being significantly upset by the flaws, and some simply cannot. And that's totally fine. I only mean to defend the right to enjoy a flawed product, and further, to not feel like you cannot praise the value you gleamed from amidst the muck. For example, there are some awesome elements in this story. More unique locales than a game like Frontiers could ever hope to achieve, a new, unique, and actual attempt, however flawed, at writing an original villain, botched yet ambitious environments such as Null Space, genuinely realized an incredible environment such as the Death Egg, Luminous Forest, Sunset Heights, and especially Metropolis. All of these areas serve to make the story truly feel like it spans the whole world of Sonic the Hedgehog. Even if it does have some odd choices for the specific areas it decides to recycle, Forces still did an excellent job of allowing its varied environments to play into its worldwide rebellion narrative. In addition, the playable avatar, while executed poorly mechanically, is a narratively consistent and frankly intelligent way to show how Eggman's oppression of the globe affects more than just the main cast. Your main character is just a dude who happens to have access to super cool weapons. He is literally just a civilian who willingly volunteered to help. That is very consistent with the story's attempted theme of community and power in numbers. Obviously, these positive elements pale in comparison to the story's numerous flaws, but it does prove that there is artistic value in a seemingly completely flawed and useless narrative. The lackluster and consistent narrative will never be good, but we are allowed and encouraged as critics to appreciate the elements it employs well if we are to rid ourselves further of bias. And just to prove that flawed products should be praised on their good merits, okay, this should be obvious, but I'm gonna say it. Sonic Forces looks much better than Sonic Frontiers.
How? Look at this lighting. These environments,
It's ugly.
How?
Sonic Forces is a cohesive and simplistic looking universe. Everything looks like it belongs. It's not groundbreaking, nowhere near it, but it has one thing Sonic Frontiers could never have: art style. Sonic Forces could run on the Switch without looking butt ugly, and every third-party game on the Switch looks butt ugly. Sonic Frontiers, while having a higher capability and fidelity, looks like you dragged and dropped Sonic models into an Unreal 4 map. There is no art style, it's photorealism plus geometry. The lighting has its moments, absolutely, but obviously from an artistic standpoint, Sonic Forces is visually superior, at least in terms of consistency. There are gorgeous locales as well. People don't give Forces enough credit for just how many unique environmental designs it gave us. The Egg Gate is a breathtaking stage with excellent spatial feel. Luminous Forest is a lovely little jungle that looks straight out of Wreck-It Ralph. Sunset Heights is just gorgeous, and Metropolis, ole mole, what an incredible setting. Now, I will grant that Sonic Forces isn't the most visually distinct 3D Sonic, but I believe it's one of the best looking. Generations still looks better, of course. I mean, Generations is better than Sonic Forces, but like, come on, if Sega's most recent title is being outclassed by Sonic Forces visual design, there's a big issue. I will grant that Sonic Frontiers has cool robot designs, but it hardly saves the game.
This was never about Sonic Forces, was it?
No, not really. I mean, sure, I love Sonic Forces, but I'd hardly call this video a comprehensive review of the title. I'm more so using it as a springboard for my thesis. You are allowed to let this guy and that guy exist simultaneously. If we want to consider ourselves consistent critics, the gaming community needs to grow up and realize that an average experience does not equal poor quality. Sonic Forces has roughly a 60 out of 100 on Metacritic. That's still 10 points higher than average. We should all be looking to engage in experiences that excel and innovate. But to call a game trash is to rid it of any redeemable qualities. The Sonic community specifically has burned Sonic Forces at the stakes, simply because it was a disappointing title. And while as a Sonic fan, I am completely empathetic to this outlook, we can't keep letting expectations cloud our logic. Dark Souls 2 is also a lovely game, but so many in the gaming community consider these games trash since they didn't live up to the originals in their eyes. We are thinking with our hearts, not our heads, and we need to remember when to use them correctly. Think with your heart when playing a game that you enjoy, like Sonic for me. I agree that Sonic as a series is not high quality, but if I enjoy a game, that is all that freaking matters. As long as I don't let that bias seep into my attempted objective critique of the game's elements, I'm allowed to enjoy that title. Moreover, we should support each other's enjoyment of flawed titles rather than ostracize each other for it. That is how you build community.
So what you're saying is I can still let myself enjoy it because I find it fun?
Yes, you may be critique personified, but all critique has a shred of emotion in it, and you were obviously burned by Force's release. Totally understandable. But you can't take that disappointment and assert that this game is a 2 out of 10 just because you didn't like it. A rating is meant to indicate quality as objectively as possible, not your humble subjective experience with its release. Do you think the viewers will learn something from this? Hopefully, but probably not. This is the internet.